Guys, it's Anna.
And this is Esther, and you're listening to Crashing Borders.
So, today we have a very special guest joining us, the Central European Finance Vice President from Procter Gamble, Ivan Liron. So, welcome, Ivan. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. We know how extremely busy your schedule is, and let me just say it is so great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and it's way more fun than what I was doing before. So it's great to see you.
So, for our listeners, I first met Ivan during my final interview for PNG, and then also had the chance to work alongside him during my project as an intern. So, while I was there, I was really amazed by his experience, personality, and leadership style, and I thought it would be super beneficial and interesting for all of us to hear his thoughts on some pretty recent matters. So we have asked him to come and chat with us about his career path, his leadership style, and the current labor market situation, as many of our listeners and members are about to enter the world of work. So we were kind of hoping to get some tips and tricks on how to do this successfully. So, Ivan, if you could just like quickly introduce yourself, your past academic life and career path up to your current role, and pretty much anything you you want us to know.
Sure. So you've probably already noticed by my accent that I'm Spanish. Let's start with that. I've actually been working now for 20 years, which makes me quite old at this for you guys. I've only worked in one company. I've only worked in PNG over the last 20 years. And the main reason why I'm still in PNG is because actually every time that they've offered me a new job, I found it super challenging, super different, and I thought it was great, and I was going to continue growing there. Actually, I am now in Central Europe, so I've been in quite a few locations with PNG. I started in London. Then I moved to Geneva. Then I went to Blois, which is a town in the middle of France, where I was finance manager in a plant there. And that's also where I met my wife, out of all places. I then moved to Spain. I worked in Madrid for a few years, then Geneva, and then now in Warsaw. And actually, I studied business like most of you guys. And I did a career at the time of studies. It was a partnership of European schools. So I did ICADE in Spain, and then I did Sup de Co in France, in Reims. And actually after that, I did a couple of internships in investment banking and consulting that I liked, but I was also clear by the end of that I didn't want to work in either of those segments. And actually got an offer to work for PNG. I had a few friends that were working there, got great references, so I started the journey there, thinking it was going to be a few years, and here I am still.
Thank you very much. I think that's an impressive career path. I like how you challenge yourself and switch cities as a French person. I think it's nice that you went to Reims. It's a really beautiful city. So now to talk about your current role within PNG, I wanted to know how does a day in the office look like?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, what I love about the job is that it never goes as you expected in the beginning of the day, right? So let me just probably share three things. One is the office has changed, right? The concept of office has changed. And I don't think it's only COVID. I think it's going to change post-COVID as well. I think I actually go to the office on average 3 of the 5 days. And I find that balance great. One, because I still think the office is essential. That's where you build your relationships, and that's where you learn most of the things. You learn most of the things not in meetings, but just having coffees and going to see people and meeting people in the corridors. It's that informal networking is super important, and I spend a lot of time on that. But then also I find that spending a couple of days at home is great, because then like that you have a bit more time to, one is a step back and reflect and think about things and things that might need changing, things that might need interventions. But also because it allows you to better organize yourself, and sometimes you need to do work on your own, so better organize yourself. So I think this has been a kind of a COVID dynamic, but I think it's there to stay. Now, the second thing is, in a company like P&G, we work in 10 categories in 10 different countries. So while we are clear on the few that are the biggest and most important, you have issues everywhere, right? So probably half of my work is planned, and it's things that we do regularly. Half of my day is not planned, and it's just going through the latest issues and helping resolve those. The other thing as well is, and it's the third one, is with COVID, we've seen it's been super interesting. COVID has been, to me, a catalyst for change that was going to happen, and it's happened much quicker than it wouldn't have without COVID. For instance, e-commerce, right? E-commerce was already a sizable part of our business, growing quite fast. Now it's become a core part of our business that has exploded, right? And it's not going to go back. I'm sure that after COVID, people are not going to go back to stores in the same way. So I think it's there to stay, and e-commerce has become a much bigger part of our business. So those are things that have changed super quickly. So back to the question of what the day in P&G is, now a lot of it is just how do we adapt to that, and how do we make sure that we shift resources, investment to grow in those channels much more than before, and we really adapt to the external reality. A lot of the day-to-day is really just reading what's happening out there and adapting to it.
Well, it sounds really interesting and busy at the same time. So, as you already mentioned, you had quite a few roles within the company already. So, what are the days? How do they look like? Is it really different? Like being VP, is it really different from the days when you had like different positions? If yes, which was the role that you actually liked the best?
So first, so the more you grow in the company, the more time you spend on the organization, the less time you spend on your day-to-day and the business, right? So clearly now I spend a lot of time on the organization, and as Anna knows, we've been doing a few changes on the structure to better adapt to the new reality. So probably the key way to describe how it's changed throughout is the more I've grown, the more I spend time on the organization. Also, you realize that in the beginning, a lot of the work you get done, it's you getting it done. The more you grow, it's the more you get it done. If you try to get it done yourself, you'll never make it. You really need to make sure that you spend time on developing and working with your organization so that you get as much impact through your teams, right? And I have to say, here in Central Europe, I have a wonderful team, and I'm super happy with it, right? So that's probably the key thing. Now, in terms of the assignments that I've enjoyed the most. I've enjoyed the most the ones that are most hands-on and closer to the business. Okay, I've had assignments that were a bit of headquarter assignment, like my previous one, where we worked a lot about defining sales policies and defining and working on the right governance for the sales operations in all countries. Right, that one I learned a lot, but I didn't enjoy a lot. Okay. This one I enjoy a lot. When it's really hands-on and really working close to the business, those are the ones that I enjoy the most. But if I had to pick one, the one that I really loved was when I worked for 3 years on M&A, on mergers and acquisitions. It was actually, I only worked on divestitures. At the time, P&G was divesting a lot of brands as we were streamlining the company down to the core categories that we are in today. And I loved it. I loved two things. I loved the external part of it. So I loved interacting with many different companies that we were trying to sell our brands to. And it was from large companies like Mars that we sold our pet care business to small companies like a fund in Spain that was building a private label business in laundry. I really love that. And also like that helps you get a view on P&G, right? Because suddenly you get scrutinized from all these companies and you get an external perspective on P&G that also helps you reassess what P&G is for you, right? So there were many things that were very positive on P&G and some of the things that I saw on opportunities that P&G could do better as I was interacting with other companies. So The other thing that I loved is actually was mostly a sales job, and so I really liked representing the company externally and selling, right? And also these processes are very dynamic. It's a super dynamic industry, it was a great experience. Probably, if I look back in 10 years' time, this assignment that I'm having here is probably one of the ones that will also be in my top list.
Wow, it's incredible that you get to do all these different skills and different job positions within the same company. So it looks like a very heavy schedule that you have right now. So how important is the work-life balance for you? And do you get time for yourself, for your family, and how do you balance this heavy schedule with your personal life?
So this is probably one of the biggest learnings I've had in my career. And it's something that I got it wrong in the first few years. So if I can influence you guys in getting it right since the beginning, that will already be a big impact that I could have today, right? So I didn't have a good work-life balance in the beginning of my career. It was in P&G, you can always work more, right? You can always work every day until midnight. And does that have an impact on your career? I thought it did, because you say I can show that I can do more things. A document I can get it even better. A presentation I can get it even better. In the end, you realize that it doesn't really have an impact on your career, and on the contrary, it could be detrimental. I have found myself that when you work really long hours for a presentation, the following day you are not fresh. And many times in a presentation, it's more important to be fresh than to have a wonderful slide with everything looking glossy and perfect, right? But then the other one is actually energy is super important. And many times when you don't have energy, you are more negative and you take worse decisions. And it's happened to me, right? So I've learned and evolved a lot from that. And actually, so two things on that. One is I force myself to stop early. So 3 days per week I do CrossFit now, and I actually have it at 4:30, and on purpose I have it at 4:30. And it's amazing because it forces you to organize yourself differently, right? In the sense that you have to go at 4:30 3 days per week. So those 3 days, 4:30, you're gone, and then I never reconnect afterwards. And then the other 2 days you can work a bit longer. Now the other thing that is sacred for me is my daughters come back to school around 5, they get ready, etc. But as of 6:30, it's important to spend time with them. And this is the other learning that I had, which is before, when we were in Geneva, we used to be back home 7:30. And we thought we still have a couple of hours with our daughters, but that last couple of hours are the ones where you have dinner, logistics, etc. So it's not the ones you enjoy. The one you enjoy is the 6:30 to 7:30, which is the one that you can interact, to play, or do other things, right? So forcing yourself to stop at a time to do things that you enjoy makes a huge difference. If I could leave you with one thing today, is like work-life balance is critical. You tend to get it wrong as you're young because you think you're going to progress faster, and at the time you don't have kids, family, etc. It's wrong. Like it doesn't impact your career. Make sure that you have it balanced all the way through.
Yeah, and I think like with now the COVID, like everyone works from home. It is especially hard to like stop because it like you don't really have a workplace to like go in and then leave it there and come home because you are home all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so needless to say, you've already achieved so much. But is there somewhere else you want to go in your career? What is the end goal for you? What other departments would you see yourself in, maybe?
So I'm one that goes with the flow. Okay. I'm not someone that says I want to be this in the next 10 years, right? I was like that already, but now I'm even more like that, right? And I realized that it works for me. It works for me for two reasons. One, because then like that, you're not stressed, right? You're not stressed in that shit. I'm not on track for whatever I want to be. It's and then the second one is that I've also realized that it makes you value, in my case, P&G even more, right? Because I've never asked for anything, right? So if things continue coming naturally, you're saying it's great because I don't need to be stressed about putting pressure or asking for something. and then things come natural. And then the day that things won't come naturally, it's probably the day that I'll realize I'll have to move on, right? Which is fine as well, right? So I think one thing I would probably say is it's better to go with the flow. The other thing also is that I've realized that I started in finance and thinking that I was going to be making a career in finance all the time. Now, finance in P&G has other elements. I did M&A. I actually did a couple of assignments that were also like hybrid of sales and finance. And I realized that I'm better at and enjoying more things that are more towards commercial versus things that are more towards purely functional, right? And that's something, and then that probably means that I will end somewhere different than whatever is in higher level in finance. And that's fine, actually, that's fine. That's not what I thought I was going to end in the beginning, but actually that's what and one of the things that I think that I find very important is the more I have planned against my strengths, the better it's been and the more I've enjoyed the roles, right? Sometimes you aim for what you want, and actually you should aim for what you're strong at, if that makes sense, right? And sometimes people don't spend sufficient time analyzing themselves, analyzing what they're strong at, and then they have career expectations. And I've seen it in P&G. I've seen people that have career expectations that I look at it and say, no, that's not what you're strong at, right? So that's likely going to lead to a disappointment or to like huge suffering to be successful, right? So I don't know. It works for me. Like, don't take it as an advice. Just take it what works for me. Like, it works to go with the flow. It really works to think through what am I strong at, so that then my next assignment plays against that.
So then to wrap up this section, we wanted to ask you, what is your greatest work-related achievement?
Without any doubt, a couple of the things that I sold when I was in M&A. I remember there was one thing that when I went to the company and said I would love to sell this, and it was a combination of a plant and a few businesses. I was told, it is impossible. You don't have corporate resources for this. And then actually I vividly remember, I went at the time, there was like one of the sector CEOs in P&G. We have 6 sectors, each head by a CEO. And I went to the CEO of the sector and I said, hey, I think we can sell this, but we don't have corporate resources. So I'm probably going to drop this, right? And he wanted to sell the plant. And then I thought, I'm not going to sell the plant on its own, but if I put some businesses to it. So I thought about how to sell the plant, and I just created almost like a company around that plant with other P&G businesses, right? And I told him, if you want to sell the plant, I think we need to sell something that is a bundle of businesses and the plant, so it's almost like a mini company, right? But they are telling me that I'm crazy, that no one is going to want to buy this, but I think we have a chance. And the guy looked at me, and I don't know if he thought, okay, let's give it a try, and or he actually believed in it. But in any case, he actually told me, don't worry, I'll give you the 3 or 4 resources that you need and go for it. And we made it in the end, right? So, and it was huge value. And the other good thing about it is that it was a plant that we were going to shut down. So by selling it and creating this business around, we actually managed to save the plant, and the plant is still working, and there's 400 people still working there, right? So I felt really proud about it. One, because like it almost looked impossible in the beginning, and 2, because it actually led to preserving a plant and preserving a lot of jobs that otherwise would have been shut down, right? So that's I hadn't thought about it, but it just came naturally to me when you asked.
That's really amazing. Congrats. And so shifting to a bit to our second topic about leadership styles.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for P&G, it's really important to hire from a really diverse background and have a really diverse team, international team. So how do you manage or lead such an international team?
Mm-hmm.
What are your
tips and tricks? So first, I mean, it's a constant learning, right? So the way I manage, it's very different from the way I managed a few years ago when I started managing people and organizations. So it's something that you need to constantly learn and adjust. So I'd probably say 2 things. One is diversity is crucial. the world is diverse out there. So if you don't have a diverse team, you won't be successful out there because you'll just win with part of the population, not with everyone, right? And a company like P&G, we need to win with everyone. So diversity is not only better and more fun, it's also a key business need. Now, the second thing is diversity is worthless without inclusion, right? And this is the thing that I've learned a lot about. And actually now I'm part of a program that is about driving inclusion and so on. So as I've been training on this, I've learned much more about it. And you realize because many times diversity is you make sure that you have the right diversity of genders, styles, and everything, right? But then if you're not inclusive, there is always going to be some kind of dominant culture, that's some kind of dominant group there, that if you're not aware of that and not careful, then diversity is not really included. So then you might have the right diversity in the room, but those that are diverse don't speak up, so you don't get their views. So then why do you have them there, right? So I'm oversimplifying, but inclusion is critical, and inclusion is not easy. Inclusion is not easy because all of us think we are inclusive, but then none of us is really 100% inclusive all the time, right? So inclusive is an everyday effort. And in P&G, there are a couple of things that we need to be particularly careful with, which is one is management. They think that they need to be decisive, and for that, people think that to show that I'm a great leader, I need to make very fast decisions, right? That's wrong, because if that means that whenever you get a question, the first thing you do is just answer, then you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose the point of view of everyone else. Whenever the most senior person in P&G gives an opinion, it's very difficult then afterwards to. So one thing that I always try to do is whenever there is an issue, I would love to hear everyone else's opinion before I give mine, if I am the most senior in the room, right? This is just one practical example, but there are many other areas. The other area to be very careful with is many times there is just this informal dynamics in the office. You can see some jokes, you can see some behavior in the coffee or when you go for a dinner, we used to go for dinners, right? Those things, people think that it's great, but you need to be very careful. You need to make sure that you're not only inclusive formally, but you're also inclusive informally. And perhaps the type of jokes or behaviors that you have with your group of friends, it's not appropriate, right? Because with your group of friends, it's your group of friends, you have your codes, you have your things, and it's just you, right? In an informal meeting with people in the office, it's not your group of friends. It's a diverse group of people, so you need to behave differently. And I see how you can be not inclusive and people not feel included overall, because in those meetings, in those informal moments where you build relationships, where you build networks, people just feel not included because they are not part of the kind of like whatever inner jokes or inner stuff, right? So that's the other area to be particularly careful with.
Yes, I like how you talked about the inclusion. You touched upon inclusion and then how it is important for you to make your employees feel listened and valued. I just wanted to know, how do you keep in touch with offices in multiple locations, and how do you kind of travel to all these offices? I mean, now obviously during COVID it's quite difficult, but yeah, how do you manage all of this?
Yeah, so I wish I could travel. The very few travel I could do at the very beginning of this assignment was great, because to me, I also realized as I traveled in the beginning that, I mean, this is great. Like now with the technology that we have, with Teams that we're using today, it is really good. I mean, you can have 80% or 70% of the dynamic, but it's not the 100%, right? When you meet face to face, one is you have the informal side, right? To me, it's very important when I travel, not only to have meetings in the office, but then to go for a drink, to go for a beer, have a dinner, and there you'll get to know the people better, and then there you can also ask other questions, and that's very important, right? So I miss that, and it's very important to, as we get back to normal, hopefully, or whichever new normal we'll have, it's very important that I will travel less, because we realize that part of the travel is useless or unnecessary, but it's still essential to have that physical contact. No, the other thing is what I try to do is, it's very important to be in touch with the full organization, right? Because even if in P&G everyone is very inclusive and so on, like you will never get the reality if you just talk to the layer under you, right? So you get things done in the right way. So I don't disrupt the layers, and I'm respectful of the layers. But if you really want to know how things are going and you really want to get the pulse for the organization, for that you need to act differently and you need to reach out. So what I try to do every time that I travel, and now that I don't, I try to do more informally, is really to reach out. When I travel, my priority is not the people that I work with in the day-to-day. It's really the people that I see less often. And that's what I try to spend time with them to get a good pulse on what's going on and the real issues.
Yeah, I remember you visiting us in Budapest. It was such a fun day. We got some free lunch, highlight of the day. But yeah, so what would you say are your key values and best practices as a leader? And what values do you look for in a coworker?
Yeah. So I mean, first, as I said before, inclusion is critical, and it's one where I'm doing better, but I'm not where I should be yet. So it's not that it's my value. I think it's a value that is hugely important. I'm improving. I'm getting better, but it's one that I need to continue improving. Right. The second one is what in P&G is called straight talk. Okay. Many times, what makes the corporate world cumbersome and frustrating is that you have an issue. There is an issue in the market, and then someone learns about the issue, and then that person communicates the issue, and then already starts getting it watering down. By the time it reaches you, it almost looks as though things are great and something good happened, right? So I think one thing that I value a lot is people that just come to me and tell me things face value without any filters. And I really appreciate it. I really love it when junior people come to me and say, I don't agree, you're wrong, or you think this is going well, but it is not going well. And it's happened to me recently. We're implementing a new organizational setup here in Central Europe. And conceptually, it makes a lot of sense, but there are a couple of areas that are not working now. And I was very happy and very grateful when a couple of people came to tell me, hey, this is not working, you'd better act on it. Because if you don't get that, then things get much worse, because then things get rotten, and then the issue spreads, and then by the time you realize you don't have an issue, you have a crisis, right? So I value straight talk because that's what enables you to avoid the crisis by learning early about the issues, right? And that's another value that and also transparency, right? I think also in careers, right? Sometimes we think that to motivate people, we need to give them very positive outlooks, right? But then in the end, it's much better to be like transparent and clear, because even if that might lead to a short-term disappointment, it's much better for the person to really plan in the right way. But also it really builds your credibility, right? If you just have one, let's say, director position, and you tell to 5 people, you are on track, you're going to make it. It's like, even if the 5 of them are great and could be great directors, you need to put the dose of reality of, hey, there is only one position, right? So to at least 3 of them, you need to indicate that if your aspiration is to get that job in the next 2 years, it's not going to be possible. And then in the beginning, it's really tough, but then you realize that as you become more transparent there, people appreciate it more and don't lose motivation, right? So that's the other thing that I think it's important, which is just being transparent and clear to people, right? And trying to motivate with false expectations or with things that you cannot deliver, right? I think the other thing that I value is probably the last thing, is in the corporate world that you guys are going to be living a different reality than the one I lived, and what's changing, which is that before, the corporate world was much around functions, right? So you had finance function, you had marketing function, commercial function, or sales function, right? I think the new world will be different, and I'm a huge fan of it, right? I think we'll move to a world where there will be less functional boundaries. I mean, you think about e-commerce, right? What's marketing and what's sales in e-commerce, right? I mean, in a supermarket, yeah, marketing is like what the advertising you do before, so that people see in TV an ad and then they go to the supermarket, and actually that's what I saw. But in e-commerce, it's all the same. People go to e-commerce to learn about the products. I mean, if you want to buy a power toothbrush that we sell in P&G, you don't watch an ad and then go to the supermarket. You go to Allegro or to Amazon, and that's where you both learn about the product, compare the products, and then buy. So marketing and sales is the same thing, right? You do all at the same time in the same place, right? So, and also finance before, a lot of the finance analysis was kind of like finance analysis that was very structured and needed before we launched the product. So how much advertising do we need to do? How much do we need to spend in promotions? Now, all that is also a bit blurred, right? So finance needs to evolve, and the analysis needs to be much closer to the consumer and much more agile, right? Things change every day, right? So this is going to lead to a very exciting world where you don't do a career in finance or a career in marketing. You just do a career in business, and the roles will be much more broad and much more multifunctional than before, right? I mean, we are in the first step towards that. I'm not saying we are, so it's going to be an evolution that we all are going to live through in the next 10 to 15 years, but it's going to be a very fun thing to be in.
Wow, that's all super interesting. And I think, yeah, like this authenticity and all having all these different skills are so important when you are in a management position to get respect from your employee and their points of view. So now to go into the labor market regarding the pandemic now, what are some major skills that you're looking for in a potential new employees? And do you value more experience, their academic background, performance? Yeah.
So I think what we look in P&G is less of a curriculum and more of a profile, right? What are the things that we've always looked for and will continue to look for, and what are the new things with the pandemic, right? So the things that we continue to look for is people that have the right level of leadership, and leadership not being, guys, follow me. Leadership being about feeling you're an owner of the business, and even if you're just 1 year in the company, you should go to the CEO and say, hey, here's what I think we should do with my brand, right? So that's leadership, which is really the ability to think forward and understand your business, understand your market, and then recommend what it should be done for your business and not just stay within your area, right? The other one is the whole area of personal integrity, right? So collaborate well with others, be transparent, be direct, be straightforward, don't have hidden agendas, like play fair, and have integrity, right? And then I think what will change and what will be new is adaptability, right? When I started in P&G, career in finance was like, I could have predicted what had happened to me and got it right? Now, if I were joining today, I wouldn't be able to predict what's going to happen to me, right? Because functions are going to change, jobs are going to change, market is going to change. So one of the things that is critical right now is just having that growth mindset, where like the only constant thing will be change. So the ones that anticipate the change the best and adapt to it the quicker are going to be the ones that are going to be doing better, right? So that capacity to read the external world and adapt to that is going to be more critical and much more important than before.
Yeah, for sure. And so you kind of like touched on the skills that are like the most crucial. But as we mentioned in the beginning, like most of our listeners and the society members as well are about to like enter the labor market, and they're just like so uncertain at the moment. They're just like such a chaos. Like, would you have any tips for the students who are looking to enter the labor market?
First, I would say I'm very optimistic. I think things are going to rebound, and things are going to rebound in a very positive way. I think people can't wait to go back spending and traveling and doing things, right? So this is not, sometimes with other economic crises or crises driven more by the economy, is much tougher, because even if people wanted to rebound, they didn't have the means to. I think in this case, a big chunk of the society will have the means to, and those that don't have the means to probably very quickly will be able to have the means to. If you think about the industries that are the most impacted with the crisis are the industries that typically rebounds back the quickest, like tourism, travel, restaurants, bars, hotels, all those things. It's almost like you could almost say the day the lockdown measures are lifted, things are flooded with people, right? So I'm very positive. I think things are going to rebound. And also, if you look at, look at the stock exchange. It's in historical highs, right? Despite probably the worst economic year since World War II, right? So I think that's also an indication that this has been a terrible crisis. But the only good thing of it is that I think it's going to be ones that we're going to get back and rebound very quickly. So yeah, I wouldn't worry if I were you guys. Things are going to be fine. The only thing is though, world will be different. So you're going to start probably shifting and start thinking about which industries you want to work on and direct your career to. Some industry will do much better than others, and some industries are clearly. So for instance, if you think about retail, I would clearly direct you to both industries that are either more agile or more e-commerce based, okay? Another industry that's going to be booming and there's going to be more and more need of is in the whole area of business intelligence, managing data. So one of the key skills that's going to be critical in the future is understanding how data algorithms work, understanding machine learning, because more and more of the business decisions are going to be done through that, not by that, like Amazon does in many cases. That's extreme. It's through that. So you need to understand very well how algorithms work, how machine learning works, and leverage it and interpret it, not to make what the machine says, but interpret it, learn from it, and then make your own decision. But certainly going towards companies that are strong in that area, or even towards industry, decision-making industry that are. So if you think about consulting is going to change dramatically. Frankly, investment banking is going to change dramatically. I think there are many jobs that consulting and investment banking is doing that will no longer be done by people, or will be done very differently, right? So, but other industries will blossom. Also, if you think about even the financial industry, what are the banks and the companies that are cool to work on, or the ones that have more future? You'll do the list of names. It won't be the ones that you'd say 10 years ago, right? So that's the only other thing that I would say is, like, as you look at companies, like really look for those companies that have been resilient through COVID. It's been a great test, a great acid test, but also that will be better adapted to the new world, that will be way more digital and way more e-based than before.
Well, thank you for the advice. And yeah, I think it's really important to stay positive and optimistic, because basically that's what we can do at this moment, and then just really try to.
And you've seen it, and I mean, this year in P&G we hired more people than ever.
Yeah.
And many I know many industries, and like some industries are doing terrible. But if you look at the numbers, it's really a few industries that have been disproportionately impacted, but the rest is actually doing well or doing better, like P&G, right? So yes, I'd be positive.
Everyone go to P&G. But yeah, thank you so much. That was our last official question. We also received a question from Zsolti from the Budapest office. And apparently
I'm gonna disconnect now.
Apparently the team really wants to know when the next offsite will be.
Well, we did so we actually we managed to do a wine tasting event in Poland with COVID. I mean, it was obviously everyone from home, but it was really good. Like, you got the wine delivered at home, the food delivered at home, and it was really fun. We also played a couple of games. So even if we cannot do the offsites yet, there's still fun things that you can still do. No, frankly, I can't wait. We'll see. I mean, hopefully with the vaccination progress, things will be safer by the time there is good weather next, but that might be optimistic. So I'm sure summer 22 will be fine. Hopefully.
We'll let him know. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all this interview. I think it was very interesting, very inspiring, and I understand why I now wanted to bring you in. And I was wondering if you would be happy with the members and listeners connecting with you on LinkedIn.
Sure, of course. Of course.
Perfect. Thank you. And is there anything else you would like to share? If not, thank you very much for coming.
No, on the contrary, thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Anna, for staying in touch.
Thank you guys for listening to our episode with Ivan, and stay tuned as in the next episode we will sit down with Kelsey Harlow, who is going to talk about mental health, and you guys could get to learn some tips and tricks on how to manage stress and anxiety. I hope you guys are just as excited as we are.